Greetings to our Calabasas pre-practicum students. I'm Rebecca Reed. I'm the Calabasas Clinical Training Coordinator, and Carolina Sarkeesian is our wonderful graduate assistant who supports the pre-practicum students, practicum 662 classes, as well as our graduating students. And she herself has been in practicum almost a full year. And we thought that it might help you to have answers to commonly asked questions by pre-practicum students about how really an experienced practicum student has been able to handle day-to-day doing practicum for a year. So I'm going to ask Carolina questions that I've fielded for years in our 661 classes, typical questions. And so we're going to learn how she's been able to manage and survive and thrive actually in her practicum site. So thank you, Carolina, for letting us know about your real life experience. So the first question that students tend to ask is, do you have to have clinical experience before even starting our program or before applying to practicum sites? So did you have, clinical experience or an extensive psychology background going into practicum?
The short answer is no. You don't. And I do know from working with the students here for about almost 2 years now is everyone comes from different backgrounds. And I myself came from kinesiology background. That's where my first master's is in. And I had no clinical experience prior to our program. So I think that it's very important to not judge ourselves. And if we don't have clinical experience, we're never going to get a site. We're never going to get an interview. We're not going to know what to do with our clients sitting in front of us, because that's where Pepperdine and the training all comes in. So no, you don't need to have it. And if you have time on your hands, I do suggest volunteering, maybe working with any population that you can. It doesn't hurt, but no, you don't need to have it to get into practicum.
Oh, what a relief. I can tell that you've calmed the nerves already of a lot of our students. We're an evening program, so we draw from metropolitan LA, a lot of life changers, career changers that are, more seasoned, maybe in another career or field. So that kind of is a good segue to the next question. So your resume that you had before you applied for practicum sites, was that geared toward the field of psychology or social service types of jobs? And how did you change it to become more appropriate for practicum applications?
Good question. And no, my resume was not geared towards psychology or anything clinically related, but our career services team is the most amazing support for your resume. So I highly, highly, highly encourage everyone to take their resume. It doesn't need to be perfect, because career services will help you tailor it. So I have teaching background. I have volunteering in like the medical field background, and pharmacy has nothing to do with psychology. And they can really help you write your resume in a way where it sounds like, okay, she can work with people. They can, make it sound like they just know what to do to help your resume be fit for practicum site applications. So I highly suggest meeting with them during this semester and kind of getting that ready to go when it's time to apply.
Yes, great point. I put the gsep.careerservices@pepperdine.edu
Yeah.
email address in the chat, they
Yeah.
also will let you make appointments through Handshake.
Oh yeah, that's
with
how I
their-
did it. Yeah, I did it through Handshake, got my appointment. They went over my resume with me. They give you pointers, tips, clean it up for you. I mean, it just made me super ready to send it out.
That's great. They even
Yeah.
have a list of words that you
Yes.
might not have thought will get the attention of practicum site supervisors. Even
Yeah.
at the body of your email, when you email your resume to the practicum site supervisors, words like, I've worked with a diverse group
Yes.
of youngsters when I was a teacher, or not only I'm bilingual, but I have a mixed cultural background.
Mm.
And you can even let them know a little bit about, your upbringing, or international internships when you were in your bachelor's, just anything to show them that you're comfortable with their clientele
Mhm.
that will definitely be in this metropolitan LA, San Fernando Valley area that's very diverse. So
Yeah.
words like that, or words to show your people skills, even
Yeah.
if you were a bank manager
Yeah.
and you did dispute resolution among employees,
Mhm.
those types of words. I was very collaborative in my job. Career services will help you with
Yeah.
how to word your resume so
Yeah.
that you can show your people skills.
Yeah, and it's not again, like it's not just about, oh, my resume is perfect, but career services really taught me like this is what practicum sites are looking for. This is what they want to see. And that also helped me into the interview process. And that also helped me with, okay, like this is how I want to put my foot forward. This is how I want to present myself. So it was very helpful. Can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, they have a large team of
Oh
not
yeah.
only career services coordinators and advisors, but also graduate assistants,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
some that are in practicum themselves and in our
Yes.
program. So very helpful. So when you actually land an interview or two at a practicum site, what are those interviews like? Is it like interviewing for a corporate job, or job in the industry, or working at Domino's? Like, what is that interview like for the practicum?
Okay, so as a student who went through the very stressful interview process, I'm not going to take away from the fact that it is nerve-wracking, but I promise it's not as bad as we think it is. So I had like my first interview was a group interview, and I've never been in a group interview before. So you'll see other maybe Pepperdine students or other programs around LA. So you might feel a little intimidated, and then we have one-on-one interviews where some people might like that better. But I think what I took from all the types of interviews, whether it was Zoom or in person, a group, individual, the main point that I felt was that they just want to see who you are and how you are going to be with their clientele, right? It's not about all your achievements and how clinically experienced you are and how smart you are. It's really like, can you handle sitting in a room with a total stranger when they're venting to you about whatever it is, right? So I say be as authentic and as genuine as possible. Just be yourself, and it will take you a long way.
Yeah, and some practicum sites require that you've had your own personal psychotherapy.
Yes,
Um,
and that's very important to make sure that where you are applying to, there was definitely a handful that didn't require it, and there was a handful that it was mandatory. So when you are doing your research and like, this is the site I want to apply to and whatnot, make sure you understand their criteria. And they do love when you are able to talk about your own journey with therapy. So I remember one of my interviews, I it was through my own journey with therapy that got me into this. So I talked about that the whole interview. So
Yeah.
you never know, but you have to definitely make sure you're understanding their criteria.
Yes, good point. So that segues to the next
Yeah.
question and area that our pre-practicum students really, deserve a way of finding a practicum site. So
Mhm.
we're continually building our practicum site profiles, we call them, on Tavera. And so what our pre-practicum students are required to
Mhm.
do is purchase, just like any
Mhm.
other course material or book, you purchase, you register for Tavera in your Psych 661 class at the latest. So you
Mhm.
can purchase Tavera before your 661 class so that you can search for practicum sites.
Mhm.
And we have not only tagged practicum sites that are in and around each of the graduate campuses so that you know geographically where they're located, but also which practicum sites have openings for the following semester.
Mhm.
So for you, it would be for January, which
Mhm.
practicum sites. You just type into a search field January 2023 or even just January to make a list for yourself of our approved practicum sites on Tavera that have openings that month or that tend to interview a couple months previous for
Yes.
that, for the training to start that month, like in January. So also on Tavera, we have an extensive site profile that the practicum site themselves
Mhm.
fill out for us. And it's very relevant and lets you know what type of schedule they expect you to keep, whether they have evening or weekend counseling or supervision options,
Yeah.
whether they do telehealth, or whether they require that you're there in person for 15 hours a week, let's say. So it's very detailed.
Yeah.
So Tavera is definitely the place to
Yeah.
search for, create lists for yourself, and then after you've done that, feel free to contact me, email me. I'll put my email in the chat, Carolina, about how we can possibly, because we don't know everything about every site, so we can't really be like the Bible on all the practicum site details. That's Tavera, but we can try to connect you up with maybe other students that are in practicum at
Yeah.
certain sites or alums. So we'll try to connect you up with like a mentor or others to give you feedback on
Mhm.
maybe one or two sites that you're interested in. So I'll put my email address in the chat. But Carolina, do you have any other tips on how they can search for practicum sites or
Yeah.
decide which one is best for them?
Yeah. So when I was applying, there was no Tavera search. So Tavera itself has everything organized for you in a way that I wish I had. And I had to manually search, look at their website, go on Handshake, find it. But now you have it all organized in Tavera, and it does give you the details, like if they're available on weekends, what times they want, when their supervision is, and all of these things do need to be considered, because it's not just about them wanting you. It's about are they a good fit for you? Is this gonna be okay with you for the next year, let's say? So you really want to commit to somewhere where it's not just if they hire you, but you're also kind of interviewing them. And a lot of details can be found on their websites. And I think you can find that on even on Tavera. So I highly encourage, if you are interested in a site, look over their website, look over their details, their mission statement. I mean, that really helped me narrow down like the 5 places that I wanted to apply to, because it can feel very overwhelming. It can feel like there's so many, how do I choose? But that's where we come in. We can help you with like what population you want to work with. Okay, these are the sites, you know, with kids or with addiction or with domestic violence. So it's organized in Tavera. And then once you kind of filter it out yourself, do the research on the sites that you're interested in. And that really helps you prepare for what they're looking for, what you're looking for, any of the little questions that you may not come up, and then kind of will spark your interest. So I think it's really important to get to the fine lines of their sites. Super helpful.
Definitely. Thank you. Their website is really important for you to familiarize yourself with, especially before you email them, contact them. But you want to zero in on what's their clientele
Yes.
and what do I have to bring to the plate, even if it's volunteer experience with their clientele. Like Carolina was a teacher before she got into our program. So she could say that, you know, she has teaching experience, work, and has a passion for working with kids. If it's a site where you would work with kids or a school-based practicum site.
Yeah.
And then also, they usually give you a general idea of the application process on their website. Is there an online application? Do they require a letter of rec from a professor or a prior employer? Do they require transcripts? Most don't. Most of our practicum sites just want you to email your resume to them with a little bit about yourself in the body of the email. But their website will say, and if it doesn't, or if the website doesn't give a specific contact person for practicum, then Tavera does. We make sure that the latest contact person and their correct email address, because that's so important, is on Tavera in that profile that you see when you look up each site. So that's just kind of practically speaking how to search for and then find a practicum site. And remember that Carolina and I are here to be sounding boards. If you've created a list for yourself and you've done research on the sites and you know you have an interview with like your fourth choice site next week and you haven't even heard back from your first choice site, feel free to set up a Zoom meeting or even a phone call, and we'll kind of help you think through that process of applying and deciding. So we're here for you for sure. So the next question is, you know, since COVID, our practicum sites and even our state regulations, the Board of Behavioral Sciences didn't historically allow MFT students, especially in practicum, to do telehealth. It all was required to be in person, and face-to-face supervision is the term that's used in the regulations. But since COVID, they're allowing it, but it's not ideal. Pepperdine isn't excited about a student going through the whole practicum year only doing telehealth and all video supervision. So I guess the next question is, and students ask this all the time, are there any sites where I can do all telehealth, and is that recommended? And I should probably save Carolina from having to answer this because I don't know, you know, of all the sites that I've known about and kind of updated information on and worked with that are on Tavera that are approved, it seems like maybe there's a handful out of over 100 that actually allow you to do all telehealth. Most sites want you to have that sense of support and community at the center at least 1 or 2 days a week. So, you know, it's rare, it's possible, but it's not necessarily
Yeah.
advised.
It's very site dependent. So when I started, everything was online. And then in June, they, made the decision with the county guidelines and whatnot that we are all going to go back in person. So then there's like regulations they have to follow. And I definitely have clients that only want to be on Zoom. And I have clients that really want face-to-face only. So again, it's very dependent on your situation. And they definitely allow us like to get on Zoom during supervision if you've been exposed, and they still want to be mindful that there is still this virus going on. And at the same time, they do definitely encourage us to be in person. So make sure that if you do have health concerns or telehealth concerns and what it is, voice it out during your interview, and or ask the site representative before you interview if that's something that is applicable to you or not. So you want to make sure you kind of weed that out before you dive in there wanting only telehealth and they're like, nope, it's only in person. So definitely check in with the site supervisor and the representatives. Yeah.
Yes, that's an important question to ask.
Yeah.
And also, it's a little scary to even say this because I'm not a COVID expert or anything. I don't represent even Pepperdine or the CDC on this, but we haven't yet found a practicum site that doesn't require that you're vaccinated. Does that make sense? So it's required, it's expected.
all ask,
of our
yeah.
practicums.
Yeah.
So I'm not making a personal statement on that, but it's just the way
I
it is.
definitely got asked that question about vaccination every single interview, and that was exactly a year ago in the fall of 2021. So again, neither of us know what they're gonna ask, but chances are you're gonna be asked something along vaccination lines. So that is also something to prepare for.
Yes, that reminds me of another basic requirement that our international students have had delays in starting their practicum because of it, is that they're required to have your social security number. So if you're an international student and you don't have your social security number, also if you are for some reason, like, in the summer or even in the fall, taking classes online and out of the country of the US, you definitely need to, at least a couple months before you start your first 662 practicum class, be here so that you can get your social security number. You could do the onboarding in person with your site. So those things have delayed our international students in starting practicum and then in getting their hours, because you can't start seeing clients until you're all onboarded. So these are just kind of words to the wise, like forewarning you from our prior students' experience. We want to not have you go through the same challenges. So now here's another question. Can I be in a private practice and do practicum? You know the answer to that, Carolina?
Okay, so
Question.
I am in a private practice setting, but I think what they're meaning is, can you be with like one therapist, right? Like a therapist who has their own private practice, and then you get supervised by them?
Your site is
They're
rare, but it's legit as well, because actually Levy Counseling, and it operates like a private practice. They even train you, don't they? They help you to learn how to market yourself and build a private practice one day. But they have a 501c3
Exactly.
nonprofit status with the state of California. So
I think that's what
um,
matters.
yeah, and
Um,
I have a copy of that because
yeah,
the state
yeah,
board requires Pepperdine to keep documentation on each practicum site for our trainees
yeah,
that it's not a for-profit, not a
yeah,
private practice, not a professional corporation, not like a medical group or a group of psychologists. It has to be
yes,
nonprofit or a hospital or a licensed health facility licensed by the state of California. So, and that's up to us, the clinical coordinators,
yeah,
but that's why it's so important that you only apply to sites on Tavera,
yes,
because if it's on Tavera when you search, it's approved and vetted by
yeah,
us and it meets the state requirements and Pepperdine's guidelines. But if it's not, if it doesn't go through the approval process on Tavera, then it's not yet an appropriate practicum site.
yeah,
But if you say have volunteered at a nonprofit in your community, right, for a couple years and excuse me, they know you really well. There's a licensed marriage family therapist there who is willing to supervise you once a week or twice a week. Excuse me, then you can actually request to add or approve a new site on
mhm.
Tavera.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say, we've had
possibility.
definitely have had students in the past that were volunteering places, and even in like certain hospitals and stuff that weren't affiliated with Pepperdine in the past, and then they did request to get them approved, and it did work. So um I say the safest bet is to just go through Tavera and apply to our Pepperdine approved sites. But if you're so passionate about where you're volunteering at or working at, then you kind of have to go through the process of requesting for approval and then hope that it works out.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And feel free to
Yeah.
email me and ask if I've heard of the site or if possibly it's been approved for a Pepperdine student in the past and they've really not had a good experience or something, we can tell sometimes if there's a track record. And if not, if I'm not familiar with this new site, if it's a nonprofit, if it is, a governmental entity like DCFS, if there's a licensed clinical social worker or a marriage family therapist who's willing to supervise, then most likely it'll work out. And just request it on Tavera, and then also email me and I'll be watching out for your request. So good. I think we've covered a lot of bases so far. So I guess one last question is, students ask me if they should specialize in practicum, if they should try to get special training in EMDR, for instance, or
Yep.
work only with adolescents because they've always wanted to work with adolescents and make a career out of that, or I want to work with couples. I want to end up working with couples in a private practice, and so excited about working with a certain population or in a certain niche, right?
That
So
sounds like me.
is that what you wanted? Okay, tell us
Sounds
your
just like
story.
me. That sounds like when I was like, I only want to work with kids. And now I still love working with kids, but oh my, do you learn from the couples, the kids, the elderly, the individuals, the adolescents. So it's now like, I'm like, I don't know who I want to work with because it's nothing what you think it is. And I think that the experience of working with all ages and all walks of life is very important than just limiting yourself to kids, because I believe you do need like kid hours, couple hours, individuals. So I don't suggest limiting yourself only to that, because you're gonna have to end up kind of getting all hours of all ages and all walks of life. Um, no, I don't suggest specializing. I think learning all of it will guide you in the direction that you didn't even know you need to be in. So
Yes.
I know
Plus,
that,
if you open
yeah.
up your
Oh yes, your
space
lens
and
and
your
everything. Like
experiences,
I
you'll be
remember
better prepared
yeah.
for the license exams.
Oh yeah. I remember like the first things I said was like, I'm not gonna work with trauma because I can't handle it. And now I'm like, the more traumatic, bring it to my room. So, and that is something I didn't know I could do or can handle, but working with that population over and over taught me that I could. So don't limit yourself and
That is
be open.
great.
Be open. Yeah. It's the real advice I can give is just stay open to anything.
Thank you. Thank you. So if we could maybe end with this, what were the most important factors in you choosing La Vie Counseling as your practicum site for you? It might have been totally practical, and that's
Uh,
perfectly fine.
uh, okay, so for me, why I chose Livy, number one was the autonomy, the fact that I can make my own schedule. So their like only requirement is mandatory supervision and team meetings with the entire Livy staff on Wednesdays. So I told myself, okay, I can commit myself 1 day a week to supervision, but every other day me and my clients can make our own schedule. And that was very important to me, to be able to make my own schedule and not clock in at 7 a.m. and leave 3 p.m. every day. So when I really wanted to work with uh children, it was very school based, and I was like, I can't commit to like every day 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. It wasn't for my life. Like I do teach at nights, I do still go to Pepperdine at night. So I needed flexibility and I needed autonomy. So definitely consider your schedule and your routine and your life while you're trying to get a practicum site approval. And then also their mission. I think it's really important that your values line up with the site that you're applying to. If you're going to be there for a year, I think it would be such a shame to be like annoyed at where you're working at. So you do have to like it. Yes, you should be happy going into work, and because you're probably going to spend a lot of time there. So like I said, I read all their missions. I talked to right back to the people who interviewed me, and I made my choice that way. Like, are they a good fit for me? Not just am I a good fit for them, but do they line up with my values? Do they line up with my ideologies as well? So I think sometimes we're so desperate to get in, and we kind of like put ourselves on the back burner, but it's really important to consider yourself as well here.
Right, thank you. And I've heard students say through the years that that supervisor relationship is so
Yes.
important. So if you can at all possible
Yeah.
meet or be even interviewed
Oh,
by the person who would be your supervisor,
yeah.
that would help you to see if there's chemistry there and if you feel like you can, work with this person if you
And it
jive.
is, yeah, it's very important because at the end of the day, you're going to ask them if this is okay, if you're going to need their help, right? So if you keep clashing, you're not going to feel fulfilled in that. So yes, it's very important if you can somehow get to the supervisor before you get hired.
Yes, yes. And sometimes it does boil down to practicalities though, and
Yeah.
scheduling, because you
Um,
you do only have either a school year or a calendar year to
Yes.
get 225 at least
Yeah.
client hours, and it can be difficult at some sites
Oh
to
yeah.
to have clients keep coming back every week and to build up a caseload.
Yeah.
So sometimes it comes down to can you be available as
Yes.
many hours as possible to
Mhm.
schedule clients, because clients don't always fit in to your schedule. So keep that in mind as well. Or if you want to get the 280 direct
Mhm.
client hours to be eligible for the MFT and the LPCC license after you graduate, you might want to go to a site that is like a school-based site,
Where you
or
can get a lot of hours. Yeah.
or the independent center where there are young adults living there, special
Mhm.
needs young adults, and they're there. So every minute or hour that you're talking to them or running groups with them, if they don't show up, you kind of go knocking on their door. Or Exodus Recovery, that's working with chronic mentally ill, and they're always just running groups every
Mhm.
day, all the time. So the clients are there, you go to them instead of waiting for clients to, show up
Yeah.
at your center, or to do an intake with clients and get them in. So there's all kinds of practical things to think about as far as
Yeah.
what you want, your end goal,
Yeah.
for your practicum year, your goals. You have choices, definitely. So what are your priorities? Because if you think about it, after you graduate, you have 6 years. I mean, it's not going to take you that long, I promise, but you do have 6 years to get your 3,000th hour after you graduate by the state board's rules. So you
Mhm.
could do a part-time private practice maybe after you graduate,
Mhm.
and take your time a little bit more with your hours after you graduate. But
Mhm.
during your practicum year, if you want to graduate after 3 required practicum semesters, you might need to just somehow adjust. Like if you're working full time, might
Mhm.
need to work with your employer to flex your schedule, or you might want to work part time instead. How can you make it work
Mhm.
to make
Mhm.
sure you get as many hours as possible and
Mhm.
as much experience as possible during your practicum year? Would you agree with that as well? And are there any practical tips, like to um coordinating your schedules, all your schedules,
Yes.
while in
Yeah.
practicum?
Yeah. You really have to consider your life, the driving, the getting there, what time, when leaving. You're still in school. You might have another job. Like I have 2 jobs and I'm in practicum and I'm still a student, and it needed to be practical for me to make my own schedule. And if that's not the case for you and you just want to get a lot of hours, then yes, maybe you should be at like a school base or a center where clients are like flooding in. But I'm I don't know how, but I'm doing it so that I'm also getting LPCC, and I set goals, and we're very referral based. So it is really important to go through that intake and build rapport with your clients, at least on my end, and keep them coming and get the hours in. So you have to consider your life, your routine, your schedule. What can you commit to? It's very easy to say, yes, okay, I'll take the job, but then are you, like, you have to consider, do you have kids? Do you have family? Are you, what is going on in your life that you might need to sacrifice in order to have a successful practicum, month and hours and not because I know working with students, I've seen it all. Some people have had to stop because of their families or because they're mothers or because they're so everything does need to be considered before you kind of jump on the boat. And I think setting goal lists and getting the support you need from us and from your professors and colleagues like is very, very, very important. Very
Yeah,
important.
yeah, and it's okay if you have to delay starting practicum
Yeah.
by a semester, because you need to work out less hours at work, or you have a family situation, or you don't think you'll be able to really focus,
Mhm.
and make practicum your first priority, like Carolina was saying.
Mm.
She is being trained not only clinically how to go about the ethical practice of becoming a therapist, but how to build a rapport with clients and build that trust and that therapeutic relationship over time so they keep coming back. How to talk about money with clients. There's so many
Yes,
things. It
yes.
takes a lot of energy, and it's
Mm.
definitely, I call it boot camp actually in becoming a therapist. So it's okay to wait and start practicum when you think your life is able to handle it and you're able to prioritize it. So
Mhm.
no shame, in any of this. We're all just trying to survive. And
Yeah.
in the program, I went through the program years ago, and I did practicum and worked full time at the same time. So I still remember we're trying to all survive and thrive and have it be a growth process, but also get those hours, to graduate if at all
Mhm.
possible. So, okay, is there anything else you want to add, or words
Mhm.
for the wise?
Yeah, the importance of self-care. Like, and I know that that's something you'll talk about in pre-practicum, but how important it is to take care of yourself. The burnout is very real, the stress is very high, and it's very important to have some alone time, some me time, and your own coping strategies on how to get through this time. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay to take care of ourselves, isn't
Yes,
in
it's
this
encouraged.
field.
Yes.
Yes, we need to give ourselves permission.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Carolina, and thank you
Yeah.
all for your attention. And we'll be sharing this video with um, 661 classes and with pre-practicum students who um, have all those questions before they start applying to practicum sites. So everybody take care, and thanks again, Carolina.